All of the Oregon coast is beautiful, no doubt about it. But Bandon is without a doubt our favorite spot. Just follow me now, and I'll show you why. Darcy and I try to visit here at least once a year to enjoy some old familiar places and to find out what's changed in our world before the old calendar flips over again. This summer, my sister Cheryl and her husband Ross would be coming out from their home in Utah, and we planned to share Bandon with them. Well, we took the back way through town on our way to our digs, and we passed through the harbor where we saw this beautiful schooner, or whatever the proper name is. I was in the Army, not the Navy, so I don't know. I think you could simply call it a sailboat, but it's beautiful. I had to get out and take a closer look. Wow, it's all naturally finished wood. And this is the same kind of vessel Mark Twain or even Melville would have used to tour the world. Well, after the boat, we passed the Bandon Fisheries Warehouse, the new home of Washed Ashore, and were reminded of some of the short-term changes in our world. Washed Ashore, a non-profit organization that prides itself as art to save the sea, was a place we first visited nearly, 10 years ago. It had a showroom downtown exhibiting art made from the trash that had been cast up on our beaches, and then Washed Ashore repurposed it as beautiful sculptures. Neat idea. This exhibit was entered through the rib cage of a whale. Inside were sculptures like this turtle. Now this turtle is amazing. Just look at the detail here. Shoe soles for eyebrows and combs for eyelashes. Wow, there were several other creations in the showroom. And here's a colorful little shark. And a starfish made from old discarded bottles. But it was outside the exhibit that we met Henry. Now just look at the trash that was used to sculpt him. Darcy gave him a close inspection.
Well, this was, of course, our first introduction to Washed Ashore, and I was just amazed by all of the different pieces of trash and things that they found, and the color coordination that goes into every sculpture. They sort things by color and then shapes, and then they put together these amazing sculptures. I had to whip out my camera, of course, get the Instagram shots or whatever, but oh man, you keep finding new stuff that you didn't see before. You go around and around the fish, which I did, Henry, and you just keep seeing new things, like the shovel for his tongue and the little fish in his mouth at the back, the plastic toy. Pretty cool. Well, enough of our trip down memory lane with Washed Ashore art. Now we're back in the present and looking at the jetty and the surf. It's fantastic. Then we scoured through some neighborhoods where Chris, ran into a couple friends.
Yeah, we found an old house that was guarded by some tough-looking characters. A guy in blue here. Yes, sirree. That's a rough-looking hombre. Look at those eyes. But here at the other side of the house was an equally rough-looking character. I think probably an uncle of old Popeye. I see he's smoking a corncob pipe. Tough looking.
Quite a vehicle. We're finding some interesting modes of transportation today.
Yes, sir. This is what the old truck looked like 100 years ago, when it was actually doing the job of protecting the buildings in this town against fire. Just take a look at this thing. That's amazing, isn't it, that it's been put back together to look like this. Well, we were satisfied that Bandon was still beautiful and that Cheryl would certainly enjoy it. As we registered in at the Windermere Cabins, they told us there was a group called Circles in the Sand that created designs or labyrinths in the beach each morning after the tide had washed the old one away. We thought that'd be a good thing to do tomorrow, but today we had other stuff on our mind and headed for our room. Now, this is not a fancy new place. Nope. It was here even before World War II, and looking out over the ocean as it still does to this day. Once we got settled in our room, we took off for the beach. Now, I know I've said it before, but the Bandon area is beautiful. You could wear that word out just talking about the surf here. And we love to just stand on the beach and watch as the waves come in. But look there. There's always something new. I know it looks just like a big rock, but look way up close to the top. A pair of cormorants has decided to make a home here. Yep. Build a nest, eat a few fish, and raise some chicks, or whatever it is that cormorants have. They got to be careful though. I'm sure it'd be easy to kick an egg and roll it off the rock for a long dive into the water below. I guess they know that though. Oh well, up the beach we go. What you have to keep reminding yourself here is that this area spends a lot of time underwater. The tide comes in a couple of times most days, and the area becomes an ocean once again. Fish swim here and gulls flit around on the rocks. But as you stroll the beach, you find reminders that others call this area home when it's a whole lot wetter than it is now. Yep, starfish, and there's a lot of them clinging to whatever they can, just waiting for the tide to come in. And sea anemones, give them a little poke. Another one.
You know, it always takes me back to childhood, remembering the tidal pools that my sisters and I explored as kids on the California coast. It just took me back.
The rocks are covered with mussels, not the Schwarzenegger type, but bivalves like clams. There are thousands and thousands of them. And more starfish. And anemones. I'll let Darcy poke a few of these.
Like our own private playground.
Well, there's some big ones down at the bottom. Get one of those big ones.
This one?
Yeah. And the one next to it.
Right down there?
Yep, it's a whole nother world that you might pass through and never notice all the life around you. Well, what's that around the next bend, or rock? What else can we find if we just use our imagination? I wonder if any of these rocks have names.
I don't know if you can see what I do, but that almost looks like a statue of King Arthur or something, looking out over his land. Can you see what I see?
Yeah, it does kind of.
Like a surprise at every corner.
That just looks like somebody standing there with his hands on his hip, gazing off over the ocean like we are.
We poked around in caves or tunnels, but we didn't find any new worlds on the other side. But we did realize that in 8 hours we could probably swim through here.
We do love giving the caves an exploration every time we're in Bandon. It's just so much fun. So some of the caves are big enough to camp in if, you know, they didn't get flooded every night.
We did discover a mystery. When Darcy came out of one of the holes, we found this rock.
Wow.
When we questioned one of the locals, he said this particular feature was called Dick Rock, but he didn't know which Dick it was named after. I mean, Dick Clark? Dick Tracy? He just didn't know. Darcy wondered even if it might be like somebody like Chris Rock's brother. If anyone knows, you can respond to us. It's still a mystery.
I'll be darned. But we go on from here.
Then we found a little bundle of furry energy.
He was so cute. Just endless energy bouncing along.
We watched him try to run the ball to exhaustion when we suddenly realized that on the cliffs above here were where we found Cosmo the Puffin many years ago. We wondered, do you suppose he might still be up there? We should go take a look. And we did. Yep, he was still there and looked as good as ever. We first met Cosmo nearly 10 years ago, and he was the first washed ashore creation we'd ever seen. Now just look.
You know, I have to think about how a person came up with this idea to make art out of trash.
Shoe soles, handles, tools, and sheaths all fit together to make a puffin.
And even though, you know, it's 10 years later, as Chris said, it still astounds me. It's like seeing it all over again, and you always see new stuff. You never feel like you're just seeing the same stuff every time. It's like you find new things as you're looking closer. Just amazing.
With his bucket mouth and plastic spoon nose, he was a decoy that could fool the real thing. Pretty darn amazing if you ask me. Seeing old Cosmo, though, did make us want to take a look at the Bandon Fisheries warehouse and see if there was anything new from Washed Ashore on display. So, after a bite of lunch, we headed down to the bay to take a look. Out in front of the warehouse was Finian, as usual. We'd seen him last year when we were here, but he is amazing.
You know, from a distance, it just looks like a sculpture, a nice sculpture, and then you get close in and you realize all the amazing hours and hours and hours of work that it took to get buckets of different colored items and to put it all together is just truly amazing when you're there.
From this angle, it almost looks like Finian is ingesting people in cars. But Darcy took a look in his mouth and pretty much ruled that out. Although he did have some interesting stuff in there.
Yes, he sure did. He had some thongs as part of his tongue and all kinds of stuff to do the textures and show the different parts of the mouth, crushing bottles to make it appear like gums. And just every detail is just amazing. This was not thrown together willy-nilly.
Inside the building, there was a new exhibit for Dandelion, the seahorse. Now, Dandelion was a pretty sharp fellow. He even had a crest on his head made from a rubber glove.
We've talked about this before, but Washed Ashore has little signs that let you look for things. They have lists of things that you can find. There's lots of other things too, but they're kind of fun to find the ones that are on the list.
And look at here, we got a bonus.
Oh, there's the transformer, huh?
That must be the transformer.
Now, here we go down Dandelion's tail and up the tail of someone else.
Then there's just looking at all the other things that are not on the list and what could these be?
On up on his back, and it's old Weedy, the sea dragon.
Just amazing. I now subscribe, I follow Washed Ashore on Instagram, and they have gone nationwide, it's done quite a job of bringing awareness to a lot of children, a lot of school activity things they do, and to spread the word, just dumping too much trash on the beaches and everywhere actually. But it's just amazing how they turned it into something that draws your attention, that catches your eye, and you just get mesmerized.
I left Darcy to document old Weedy while I went over to look at the octopus.
Another case of a lot of attention went into detail here.
Boy, he was a piece of work and sure used up a bunch of orange bottle caps for the suckers on his tentacles.
At some point, it's almost like overload, sensory overload, and you just you have to get back out on the beach to appreciate the simplicity and power of the ocean, to almost recharge or refresh yourself from all of that.
Maybe Dick Cheney. He was vice president. He ought to have a rock named after him. Like I say, it's a mystery. We took our last look at the horizon and headed back to the cabin. Our first day of scouting had certainly been a success. We knew Cheryl would love the place just as we did. Darcy reminded me that tomorrow morning would be circles in the sand. 8 o'clock, be there at 8, they said. We were told to just hit the beach, turn right, and go until you find people working. And that's just what we did. And after a few minutes, we found the people. They were all armed with rakes and imagination, and they were all busy turning the beach into a puzzle.
Got to meet with Denny, the guy who created Circles of Sand, while we were there, and asked him different questions, and he said, the best part is, look at my office. Not bad.
We watched them for a half hour or so, and then it was showtime. People were starting to gather, and the labyrinth stretched out before us. When it was our turn to start, the lady in charge gave us each our stone and said, just head on out and follow the path. You can't make a wrong turn.
Okay. Let me see. I don't know what I'm doing, obviously. Okay, I get a rock for walking the trail, and I'm standing in somebody's way, I'm sure.
No, you're fine. You're fine.
Darcy proved her wrong.
I want you to know they said there was no wrong turn, and I started on the wrong turn, and everybody yelled at me. Well, Denny created Circles of the Sand as a kind of a personal spiritual journey of his own, and he just wanted to share it with everybody else. We had had some tough news from Chris's sister Cheryl. She had a scary diagnosis, and they weren't sure they were going to be able to make the ocean trip that they were going to do, coming to Oregon to see us and see the ocean. But we still held out hope, and I thought and prayed for her as I walked around holding my rosy quartz stone.
We've still got that ahead of us. Holy cow, this is turning into an exercise.
For some, it's a spiritual thing, and for others, it's exercise. But it's still cool. It gets people together walking around on the sand. It's kind of neat. You're getting this, right? Shine like the whole universe is yours.
I'll be darned. We're getting right close to the get out spot, the exit hole.
The one I tried to go in.
The one Darcy tried to go in to prove that you could make a wrong turn here.
Okay, that's Saturn. We are orbiting Saturn.
The next morning we were headed for home. First though, we stopped by the cliffs overlooking the maze area. The clock had run out for the labyrinth. Its time had concluded, and it was now becoming one with the ages. Sadly, the same was true for Cheryl. Not visit Bandon with us, having passed away on June 22nd of this year, on the anniversary of her marriage to Ross. I guess we're all destined to follow our paths through life, not knowing where they'll end. Except this guy, he looks like he kind of got lost.
Maybe he just took a wrong turn. I've done that, and I know how that feels, but, you know, he didn't have anybody yelling at him.